was going to say thoughts and prayers, but I'm not stupid. But if you're in LA, do whatever you can to survive, find your people, and all that good stuff. Massive, like several wildfires are actually burning inside the city limits. And starting off with something that you can actually concretely do to help the lowest and deepest masses out there, incarcerated youth. We're going to talk more about incarcerated people later because this is something that's extremely important for firefighting in California. But yeah, the Youth Justice Coalition reports that 116 incarcerated youth have still not been evacuated. Call LA County supervisors and demand youth in Sylmar Neardorf Hall and Malibu Camp Kilpatrick be evacuated now. So you've got Counselor Supervisor Horvath, who can be reached at 213-974-3333. You've got Supervisor Solis, who can be reached at 213-974-4111. You have Supervisor Hahn, who can be reached at 213-974-4444. You've got Supervisor Mitchell, who can be reached at 213-974-2222. And you also, finally, have Supervisor Barger, who can be reached at 213-974-5555. LA is on fire, and Nahid Ahmad is reporting that Kenny Corey has cheated on his wife. Okay, I need to find out who the fuck this dude is, because it's gonna bother me. It's going to eat at me. This is the second time this fellow has been mentioned. Who the fuck is Kenny Corey? Okay, an MMA fighter. Okay, cool. I mean, the guy gets kicked in the head, so if you habitually get kicked in the head, you're probably not going to make the very best of decisions. And you're going to do stupid things like cheat on your spouse. So, yeah, fires in LA. This is in Koreatown, so this is not like in the sticks. This is not Pasadena. This is not Malibu. This is right in the middle of LA. It looks like a building electrical fire. Maybe tied to the wildfire, may not be, but either way, like people think that the only risk from fire is like burning. Okay, you can dodge, you can escape the flames, but the main danger, especially to people who have breathing issues, is smoke, flying embers, stuff like that. There's a lot of ways to get fucked up in a fire. So yeah, if you're in LA, stay safe. So yeah, this person, Andrew Jew, said that he escaped the Eaton fire to K-Town just to see a new fire start up at Western and Beverly. Yeah, because I'm curious. I need to know who this person is. Fire insurance pulled weeks before LA wildfires. Hmm. This is a senior center in Altadena.
Huge hurdle.
Hopefully they evacuated everybody. I'm pretty sure they evacuated everybody in time. And you also have the firemen. Well, there are women fire women. The firefighters are literally running out of water in some of the canyon areas. I'm not all that familiar with the geography of LA, but yeah. So you've got firefighters that are running out of water. And I also saw a graph earlier which said that Mayor Karen Bass's administration, Karen Bass is wild because she used to be somewhat radical. Here, I'll show you. So Karen Bass is the current mayor of LA. The mayors of the three biggest cities in the United States are all black. But Martin Luther King is probably still turning in his grave because none of them worth a shit. Karen Bass. I don't like people named Karen as a matter of course. And she's chilling in Ghana while her city burns. Like Black Nero. So she was born in LA, the daughter of Wilhelmina Duckett and DeWitt Talmadge. But I love old school black names. DeWitt. Of course, most of them are basically just like white Southern names, but like we took them and we made them our own. So she witnessed the civil rights movement on television with her father, and this sparked her interest in community activism. While in middle school, she worked for RFK's presidential campaign. Jesus Christ, she's old. And in the mid 70s, she was an organizer for the left wing Venceremos Brigade. She visited Cuba 8 times in the 70s. So, this is an international organization that was founded in 69 by members of the Students for Democratic Society and officials of the Republic of Cuba. Like the weathermen of the organization went on this shit. So you literally went to Cuba for a few weeks and you participated in the production process. You helped chop sugar, all that. Um, Americans originally offered to help by taking industrial jobs that were displaced by the massive sugar harvest. Americans always seek the easiest fucking shit. Emma the Stone Spider has just called the sheriff's office, no answer yet. Yeah, that's pretty typical. Especially if a lot of people are calling in, they're not going to hang up. I mean, they're going to start hanging up or they're not going to answer the phone in the first place. That shows how. Here's the thing about incarcerated people when disasters and shit happen. They did the same exact thing in New Orleans when Katrina hit. Hold on, I will show you. I will show you all. Orleans Parish. Here we go. From Black Agenda Report. I try to use black media whenever I can because fuck ruling class media. So on August 29, 2005, Katrina ripped through New Orleans. A storm surge breached the city's levees and drainage canals flooded 70% of the city and exposed the aberrant third-class status of black people in the United States. Amongst the hardest hit were the least visible because they were in jail. African American prisoners, especially those incarcerated within the Orleans Parish Prison, part of a prison system whose earliest buildings were used to imprison and torture rebellious enslaved Africans. So they literally just left these people to die. There was an ACLU report that was released on August 29th of 2006, roughly a year after Katrina hit. And a staff attorney for the National Prison Project, Eric Balaban, said that the prisoners inside the Orleans Parish prison suffered some of the worst horrors of Hurricane Katrina. They literally locked these dudes in their cells and left them to drown. There are also children in this jail. Ashley George, one of the 300 children transferred to Orleans Parish Prison shortly before the storm from the city's Youth Study Center. Please tell me that's not a jail. That is the most dystopian name for a jail for kids that I've ever heard. It's like naming a jail the playpen. Anyways, Miss George said that when the storm started, water broke through the gate and started rising. The day after the storm, water came into the jail, and I was in water up to my neck for a couple of days. Water up to your neck for a couple of days. 2 days in filthy shit and piss infected. This is how cholera spreads. This is how you get dysentery. There's no food, no water, so naturally you're probably going to try to drink the flood water. You're going to be fucked up. And they were left in this water up to their neck for a couple of days. There was no food. There was no water. She felt like they was going to die. The guards didn't do anything to help us. Most of the guards already had cut out before the storm hit. We weren't going to get out, but the adult prisoners escaped and got help for us. Military people told us that if we had stayed in there another day, we would have drowned. The adults took a mattress and floated some girls out to the boat. She took another boat and went to the bridge where she received a bag of chips and water after having no food for several days. There were also pregnant girls that were locked in this hellhole, but they didn't get any special attention. Ashley's grandmother, Ruby Ann George, said, after the storm, I was going crazy. I kept calling and calling and calling and calling. They ain't nothing but children. I kept calling all over, but I didn't find out where she was for almost a month. This girl was missing for almost a month. Nobody should have gone through that, adults or children. They should have gotten them out of there. If it wasn't for the other prisoners, they would have drowned. Joyce Gilson also told of prisoners helping each other. The women in our unit stayed in open dorms with triple stacked bunk beds. Some women were even sleeping on the floor because there was no bed space. Water was backed up from the toilets, and sewer water from the flood came under the doors. Sewer water came under the doors and filled up the unit to the second bunk. So you got a bunk bed. Bop, bop, bop. You got sewer water right here. Sewer water right there on a second bunk of a triple tier bunk bed. It was hard to even know what day it was. In our unit, there were some elderly women who had trouble getting on top of the third bunk to avoid the water, and there was at least one pregnant lady who also had trouble. Excuse me. So, why does America do this? Why does America not give a shit about prisoners? Well, for one, the overwhelming majority of prisoners in the United States are black and Latina. Yeah, nothing in Dante's Inferno compares to what they went through. Because America is hell on earth. Dante is fictional. Hell is fictional. America is real. So they left these people in this jail. They're leaving these kids in this prison, this jail, these camps. They even call the fucking prisons camps. They left these kids in these camps because black and brown people are seen as a surplus population. If you're a prisoner, you are seen as being fit for slave labor at the most. And at the very worst, you are seen as being fit for culling. So when they leave you in a facility that is 2 miles away from an active, deadly, dangerous wildfire, they're basically saying you should die. They're saying that you are expendable. They're saying that you are not an asset to society. They do not want you in society. They want you deceased. That's the exact same thing they conveyed to the prisoners and the children, literal children, that they locked in this hellhole, knowing good and goddamn well that Katrina was coming and was going to fuck New Orleans up. They do not care about you. Do not care about any of us, free or enslaved in prisons. That is why reformism simply is not going to cut it. Yes, reforms are good. I'm not saying that we should be accelerationists and hope the people's situation gets worse, because we are not cruel, evil people like the enemies that we are fighting. What I am saying is that reforms can be overturned. They can be toppled. So when you build your sandcastle in the fucking water, you should be surprised. You should not be surprised that ain't shit coming. More on this later. So, did you guys know that most of the people that are tasked with putting out this fire, well, some of them are out of water now, so there's really not all that much they can do. Did you know that a lot of these people are incarcerated? This is from roughly, how long ago was this? This is from 4 years ago. So when you see these guys come up in a few minutes, well, in a few seconds rather, think of what's going on right now. California relies on incarcerated firefighters. And these guys, when they get out, they cannot become actual firefighters on the streets because of their criminal record. This is something that people have been talking about for years. Let's watch.
Wildfires are engulfing the state. Crews are battling more than 600 fires that have killed at least 7 people. Governor Gavin Newsom said Monday 300 lightning strikes overnight had sparked 10.
Also, fuck Gavin Newsom. For one, the guy looks like Gordon Gekko in the worst way. And for two, this guy in his spare time spends his time breaking up homeless encampments. Okay, what type of evil fuck? Like, what parasites do you have eating at your brain? What makes you, like, what freak illness in your head has convinced you that it is okay to spend your free time ruining the homes and destroying the possessions of your most valuable constituents as governor of California? Like, what makes you think that is okay? And of course, this guy, like 9 out of 10 of the governors of California, has presidential ambitions and aspirations. So he's probably going to make a play for the Democratic nomination in 2028. It is essential that we do not let Gavin Newsom get his finger on the red button. Like this, like would we say that Democrats and Republicans are are opposite sides of the same fucking coin? Gavin Newsom is who I'm thinking of. The other end of the Democrat coin is John Fetterman, but let's not go talk about Hodor like that. He has enough problems. But anyways, like when people say that Democrats and Republicans are the same, because this Silicon Valley techno fascism, in a way, it's even more dangerous than good old fashioned Southern redneck racism because this Silicon Valley techno fascism has the veneer of not being fascist at all. Oh, we just want clean cities. We just want new houses. We just want all of these good things. We basically want to live in a dystopia that's not really a dystopia. Let's all be Japan. Let's be Singapore. Like, that shit is. That's not going to work. Fascism is fascism. That's why you should read George Jackson.
New fires. The biggest group of fires in Northern California around Napa is now 25% contained. So far this year, 7,000 fires have destroyed 1.4 million acres, compared to 56,000 acres burned at the same time last year. Tens of thousands of firefighters have been deployed across the state to combat the blazes, which are raging as California also battles a record.
God, that looks like blood. I know it's some type of weird firefighting chemical, but bruh. It looks like I think that's that shit they were dropping out of that airplane earlier. But can you at least change the color of the shit?
Heat wave and the deadly pandemic. This comes as the state's prison firefighter program, which annually deploys thousands of incarcerated firefighters to the front lines for just $1 an hour, faces
$1 an hour to breathe in smoke. I mean, they have respirators, but they're probably not the best. Like, how much do you think California is going to spend on prisoners that it sends out as basically meat shields to fight the frequent fires? Not much. So the respirators probably are Korean War vintage or earlier. So you're breathing in smoke, your eyes are burning, and you're at risk of falling and stumbling and being burned to death by a rapidly moving wildfire. And for all of that, you get $1 an hour. Do you have any idea how much shit costs in jail, by the way? The reason that stuff is so expensive in jail is because there are contractors that have a literal monopoly. So if they want to charge you $200 for a pair of Walmart shoes, then that's what you got to pay. Or you can just wear the state issued shoes. But nobody wants to wear those because they're fucked up. I've never been to prison, but I've studied and I have a lot of people in my family who have. So same thing, phone calls, JPay, it's a racket. All of these little things like emails, they'll charge you fucking $5 to send a fucking email. It's a monopoly, so they can charge whatever they want. So you're not getting really far in prison on $1 a day. I'm sorry. Especially in California, where the prison system is even more overcrowded than regular. So the monopoly is just rubbing its greedy little hands together and enjoying the show. And you send these guys out to fight your fires for $1 an hour.
Diminished numbers because of the coronavirus pandemic. Last month, Governor Newsom ordered the release of some 8,000 incarcerated people, including some from the prison fire camps, as COVID-19 swept through the state's prisons and camps. Several fire camps faced COVID outbreaks in July. Now, as advocates demand mass release for incarcerated people at risk due to the pandemic, more than 1,300 incarcerated firefighters are currently fighting the blazes ravaging.
No, firefighters that are civilians that are not in prison, they're paid, of course, it's still an exploitative wage, like all wages. But no, this $1 an hour is what they're paying the incarcerated firefighters. The regular firefighters get a regular pay.
California, one of the state's 44 prison camps.
You guys from overseas may not know this, but the United States Constitution, one of the post-Civil War amendments, actually legalized slavery in involuntary servitude. So, like, yeah, you can't buy people anymore. Well, actually, in the South, they did. They had like a convict leasing system where they would literally auction off chunks of inmates to plantation owners and turpentine mill operators and sawmill operators and miners. And mine company bosses to go and do their dirty work. There was actually a huge struggle in Tennessee, I believe, where they sent up a bunch of convict laborers from Alabama to break a strike. And the miners that were on strike put the inmates back on a train and sent them back to Alabama. Whether or not the inmates escaped off the train is a fact lost to history, but I find that hilarious and a very, very nice statement of class solidarity. Of course, it was also self-interest because the miners did not want the strike broken. But yeah, if you are in prison in the United States, they could literally make you work for free or atrocious shit like $1 an hour.
The fire prison camps. Delta Conservation Camp in Northern California is battling the fires with a crew of 55 incarcerated firefighters compared to the camp's 132-person capacity. Over the weekend, Democracy Now! Reached former incarcerated firefighter Marty Vinson by phone. He was stationed at Delta Camp in 2018.
Notice how they call these like facilities camps. Concentration camp, fire camp, youth camp, camp.
Where Democracy Now! First met him. In an interview, Vincent called the prison firefighting program California's pig.
Would I say the fire is rising? Normally, I would say that we shouldn't make jokes about horrible situations like this, but that was a good one.
Bank and spoke out.
Jesus Christ. Yes, would.
About the conditions firefighters at Delta Conservation Camp.
What can I say? I like bad boys.
Are currently facing.
I imagine the worst. I honestly do. I feel like I can imagine them working much longer hours. So we normally do 24 on, 24 off. I can imagine them doing anywhere because it's possible. You can do a 48 to 72 hours. It's just so many things.
He said 48 to 72 hours shift
that go on out there, regardless if it's natural things that can kill you or let alone a human being that's making a decision that can possibly kill you. But I believe this is probably the worst conditions, and the firefighters are probably going through their worst experience ever.
That's Marty Vinson, formerly incarcerated firefighter. To see our whole interview with him at Delta Conservation Camp, go to democracynow.org. The prisoner firefighter shortage has laid bare California's reliance on prison labor to keep its ever-growing wildfire season at bay, an exploitive system many have called slavery.
So every year, these fires get worse and worse, and the fire season lasts longer and longer every year. But global warming isn't real.
Labor. California saves up to $100 million a year by using prison labor to fight its biggest environmental problem.
Whenever something horrible happens, like if you just follow the money, like if you think, oh, some evil capitalist fuck was trying to save money, 9.9 times out of 10, you're going to be correct. Okay, they don't just do evil shit just to be evil, although yes, these people are sociopaths. They do this evil shit to make and save money for themselves so that they have more to spend on their class interests.
And once released, it's nearly impossible for formerly incarcerated firefighters to get jobs with county or city fire departments in California. For more, we go to Oakland, where we're joined by activist and formerly incarcerated firefighter Rasheed Lockart. He's a firefighter at San Quentin State Prison.
That's where the dragon lived. San Quentin was where they had George Jackson incarcerated and where they murdered him.
Was released in January. He's an organizer with the group Planting Justice in Oakland. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Rasheed. It's great to have you with us. Can you talk about what's happening right now? California's talking about a firefighter shortage because prisoner firefighters, a number of them have been released due to COVID or are sick with COVID. Explain what's going on and the fact that they make $1 an hour if they're healthy enough to fight the fires.
Yeah, so these conditions, they're just, they're implorable. You have, I believe it's 600 less firefighters this year, and we're facing some of the largest wildfires.
The forest fires in Canada, specifically in Alberta, get worse every year. The Alberta Premier constantly rejects any of the science of climate change. Now, that makes sense. Alberta is basically the Texas of Canada, to be honest. So, yeah, it's not a big surprise to me that you have I bet you he wears a cowboy hat, too.
That we've ever had in this.
Am I familiar with the Black Panther Party People's Beat? I heard of it while reading a Fred Hampton speech. I know which speech you're talking about, but can't find the beat in audio form. I imagine if you watch if you watch old videos of Black Panther rallies, I mean, I don't think they specifically announce it's the Panther beat, but I think that it's a method of either clapping or talking, cadence, so to speak. So I guarantee you that if you go through old videos of the Chicago BPP, which is Fred Hampton's BPP chapter, then you will probably start to pick up on the Panther beat. It's not something that. Thank you for making me think of that. I really haven't given that all that much consideration, but I do remember him specifically referring to something that that was referred to as the People's Beat. I don't know what it is, but just extrapolating, I imagine it's a form of clapping, like rhythmic clapping or chanting or a cadence of speech.
State. These guys are out 24, 48 hours at a time. That young man came from Delta camp. That camp, they are.
Lil Red Books is in the middle of reading Detroit. I Do Mind Dying due to me posting about it. You grew up there. This book is great. It is a very good book. I lent my copy to a comrade in my DSA chapter.
I just talked to somebody there, and they're coming.
Honestly, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers and the Revolutionary Union movements, that was the vanguard of class struggle in this country. Like, if you could do that again, all across the country, then we will actually have a fighting labor movement in this country.
They're leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning, not getting back till 8 o'clock at night, and this is every day. So they're being overworked. And for, $1 an hour, I mean, they're working alongside firefighters that aren't incarcerated people that are making, we don't know how much, and putting their lives on the lines. And it's just, it's a little bit of a human tragedy. They're battling COVID-19 and they're battling wildfires at the same time.
Rasheed,
Indescribably cruel. So if you've got mild COVID, you can still go out and fight the fire. For one, COVID fucks your respiratory system up amongst various other systems in your body. So why the fuck would you have people out exposed to wildfires with a fucked up respiratory system? Yeah. But again, they see the incarcerated population as surplus, free or near free, and not free as in liberated, free as in you cost nothing, labor power. So, of course they do that. If you die, then they've got one less mouth to feed. That's how they look at it.
I wanted to ask you about Kamala Harris, so the nominee of the Democratic Party for vice president. When she was Attorney General of California, she advocated against early release programs for incarcerated people because it would reduce the number of incarcerated firefighters. Could you talk about her role in?
So we literally have to keep these people in prison forever because we need free firefighters so we can save $100 million a year in our state budget. Yeah. Yes, you heard correctly.
This whole issue of the politics of how to deal with the incarcerated and the fighting of fires in California?
Yeah, well, the fact is it impacts our state economy, right? They're saving $100 million a year on having formerly incarcerated individuals fighting these fires. And it's a little bit of a slap in the face to those of us who are incarcerated, who are trying to, be the best that we can be and put our lives on the lines to go out here and fight these fires. But, her doing that and being a part of mass incarceration as, the district attorney, she essentially is signing people up for slavery. Right? You want these guys to go out and fight these fires and do it for only $1 an hour. And then you're turning around and saying, we don't want to release anybody because, it's going to cost the state this much.
Yes, they are justifying slavery, generic urbanism channel. Kamala Harris literally argued against releasing incarcerated people who are forced to go fight these fires because they would have less people to fight the fires for damn near free. Okay. $1 an hour is basically be free. It's basically free. Kamala Harris, in her term as Attorney General of the state of California, argued against releasing these men because then they would have to hire and pay professional civilian firefighters, and they don't want to do that. Meantime, these guys have been released. These guys have firefighting experience. Were I governor of California, I would literally be tripping over myself to hire and pay at a living wage formerly incarcerated firemen. Like, what the fuck? So you got these guys that have this experience, but they can't even use it because they sometimes shit. Okay. When somebody's in prison, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've done something, okay? It doesn't. There are thousands upon thousands of innocent men and women and non binary people in prison in this country. Malcolm said that when you think of America, think of prison. He was not being hyperbolic. He was saying when America is a giant ass prison, is a giant ass jail. So just because you are in prison or jail does not mean that you did what the judge sent you there for allegedly doing. A lot of people from foreign countries, they don't have any idea how easy it is to end up locked the fuck up in this country. All you have to do is piss off a cop. All you have to do is piss off a member of a cop's family, and they will literally plant shit on you. They will, bro. If you come to America, you'll see how fucked up it is. There are tens of thousands of migrants that are in ICE facilities. These places are so shitty. They literally had a dude a few years ago that was performing hysterectomies on migrant women just for the hell of it. Just to do it. So you've got fucking Dr. Deaths and Dr. Mengelas in these places. You've got experiments that are taking place. You've got all types of horrible shit that are taking place. And to end up in these places, you do not have to do anything wrong. You don't. So be very, very weary of somebody that acts as if prisoners are some type of expendable population, or they are to be denied a basic income, or they are to suffer for the rest of their lives because they've spent some time behind bars. Because a lot of these people haven't done anything besides be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Horrible.
Came out, and later when she became senator, she said that it was her prosecutors who argued this in court. She said she thought it was reprehensible, not at the time. She says she didn't know about it, but said the buck stops with her, and so she took responsibility. It's unclear if she knew about it. But this whole issue of firefighters like you come out of prison, you're extremely experienced. CAL FIRE sings your praises because you're doing the most difficult work, yet you find it so difficult to become a firefighter. Like right now, for the many people who are released, even...
Also, another reason why it's so hard for formerly incarcerated people in the United States to get decent jobs and avoid committing what our state has determined are crimes, that because they want you back in prison. Okay, you've already heard both Amy and Rasheed talk about how like Kamala Harris argued for the perpetual incarceration of these dudes. They want you back in prison. They want you to come back. It's job security for the COs. It's job security for the various industries and contractors that depend on the existence of prisons. Also, have any of you guys ever wondered why they always situate prisons in rural areas? Because if you have a black and brown majority population inside a prison, and say those guys escape, you're in an all white rural area. Okay, so you break out of prison in, I don't know, Potosi or Bonne Terre, Pacific, Missouri. Everybody around there is white. So you break out, say you're able to ditch your orange jumpsuit. Or no, in Missouri, prisoners wear brown. You're able to ditch your brown, they look like scrubs. You're able to ditch your brown scrubs and put on civilian clothes. I still know that you are not one of the black people that lives in Pacific or Bonne Terre. Like, black people that live in places like that have a specific look, cadence, and accent. I'm sorry, but it's true. And they know that you're a city boy before you even open your mouth. That's why they don't build prisons that's why they don't build state prisons in places like St. Louis, Missouri. And jail and prison are different. If you are pretrial, or if you're sentenced to a relatively low sentence, then yeah, you serve your time in jail. But if you're sentenced to like 5, 10, 20, 25 years, you're sent to a state penitentiary, state prison. So they build penitentiaries in rural areas because they don't want black people escaping and blending in. Whereas in places like Detroit or St. Louis or Miami or Baltimore or LA or San Francisco, it's relatively easy to blend in. So you can lose yourself. It'll be hard for them to find you. That's why. It's a counterinsurgency tactic. Very interesting. Also, a fun bonus side effect is that the white people in rural areas are some of the biggest supporters. Like, all of them want a prison to come to their town. All of them want a jail in their town because that is guaranteed stability. That's guaranteed subsidy to the dispossessed former white yeoman class. Everybody wants a fucking prison in their town in rural areas. That's guaranteed job security. That's guaranteed state money.
And perhaps early because of the COVID pandemic, why don't they just immediately hire you, since you have the experience, you fought these fires, at CAL FIRE salaries? Not to mention giving more money to the prisoner firefighters.
Yeah, that's the question, right? I mean, you take, like myself, I was a lead engineer on a Type 1 fire engine and a lead on the ambulance crew. I don't know what more qualification you would need, right? That should automatically entitle me to go right into a department upon my release, but that's just not the case. They, for like me being more of a municipal firefighter, they want us to have EMT certifications, and state law right now currently blocks me from getting that.
Because you were formerly in prison?
Because I was formerly in prison, yes. And if right now, like, we're hearing CAL FIRE get on these interviews and say that we just lack resources. Well, what they're not saying is we lack the incarcerated firefighters. That's the issue, right? Because we make up the backbone of the firefighting department. And if we're saving the state $100 million, how much more can we save the state by taking formerly incarcerated people coming out of these fire camps, coming out of these firehouses, and putting them right into employment?
Oh, what's up, Just True James? How's Midmo doing? Hopefully well. Cops in the U.S. are also very transphobic too. That is true. Very good comrade of mine during the protest in 2020 or 2017, I believe. The CJC, my city's jail. They actually put her in them. They actually put her in with the men because, like you said, she has not had bottom surgery. So yeah. And of course, the COs will literally encourage these dudes to fuck with you. Hey, here come one. Yeah, very ignorant. If you are trans in this country, I highly, 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 highly recommend that you avoid the criminal justice system. If you go to jail or prison, you are not gonna have a good time. You're not. So yeah, stay the fuck out of jail. That's all I can tell you.
I'm wondering, when you were out there fighting these fires, to what degree did you encounter National Guard troops? Because I've been surprised time and again at how few National Guard are mobilized when these fires spread in California.
The role of the National Guard is not disaster relief, really. Yeah, they do it, especially down south in like Louisiana and Mississippi when the hurricanes come through, or Florida. But the goal of the National Guard is to suppress domestic uprisings. That's why they were out there in Ferguson. That's why they were up in Minneapolis. Fuck you, Tim Walz. That's why I did not like. Here's the thing. A lot of the writers in DSA, like, every time some Democrat that has said, hey, boss bad. Every time the Democrats trot somebody like that out with the express intended purpose of capturing assholes like them, then what happens is, like, they say, oh yeah, we need to back Tim Walz. And then you find something horrible and they're like, that's not important right now. Yes, the fuck it is. He literally called out the National Guard to shoot at and bust protesters' heads. That's something we need to know about. And yes, that will definitely inform whether or not black militants and black radicals vote for you.
Well, I myself am not qualified to answer that because
It's not NAPO, it's NEPO. N-E-P-O. It's from nepotism.
Was at an actual...
Which in Latin, if I recall correctly, means hiring your nephew. Anyways.
Functioning firehouse. I wasn't at a camp, so I didn't get to go out to the wildland firefighters. I instead was resigned to the city of San Quentin, the quote-unquote city of San Quentin, and where they had a full residency around there. And so I was doing basically municipal firefighting.
And can you talk about what you did when you were in prison, or what you've heard people are doing, for example, at San Quentin with the COVID outbreak? I mean, you have one of the worst outbreaks in this country, is in the prison system of this country,
Right.
San Quentin at its heart.
They also use COVID as a means to cull the prisoner population. Like when I say that the state treats these people as literal livestock, like I'm not joking. You are slave labor at best. And when you're sick, or when you are elderly, or when you are disabled, they will literally take any means necessary to get rid of you. COVID was a godsend to these people. Finally, we can clear the fuckers out. Like eugenics literally developed in this country. The Nazis, they literally were consulting American pseudoscientists for shit like Oxygen T4, which was the means by which they got rid of a shitload of disabled people. And of course, the Holocaust, which wiped out 6 million Jewish people. And if I recall correctly, 2 million other Slav, Roma, and countless other people. Like, everybody got fucked in the Holocaust. You had Roma people, you had Jewish people, of course. You had Jehovah. They even locked up fucking Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah. They called them Bibelforschers. So, yeah. Not a good time. Evil, nasty, disgusting people that were thoroughly and resolutely punished by the great Soviet army.
Yeah, so what people are doing right now, and what I'm hearing, is they're essentially just sheltering in fear, right? The conditions are not they're not. San Quentin is not designed to have an outbreak like COVID-19. It's impossible to practice social distancing. It's overcrowded, and then people are being herded off into tents and back into gymnasiums. That, I don't know if you remember, about 5-10 years ago, there was, an outcry about the way they were housing people in these gymnasiums. And so San Quentin is just not set up for this type of outbreak. And so my incarcerated people that are still there are sheltering.
Yeah, San Quentin is also like notoriously ancient. Like if you look at a picture of it, it literally looks like a medieval dungeon.
In place, my fire crew that's there at San Quentin, they're getting more calls than they can handle. I talked to one of my incarcerated firefighters who had said that morning, it was only 11 a.m. in the morning, that they had been on 5 calls. But they had only been on 5 calls that morning because they couldn't get to the other 11 that were happening. So it's a human tragedy what's happening in San Quentin, and the incarcerated people that are there are living in fear.
Well, Rasheed Lockart, we want to thank you so much for being with us. Rasheed worked as an incarcerated firefighter at San Quentin State Prison, was released in January, now an organizer with Planting Justice in Oakland.
Yeah, and you can follow him on Twitter, which I highly recommend you do. Very, very intelligent comrade. Like every comrade that I've met that has been incarcerated, like they're supremely disciplined, and they've got a lot of good shit on the ball. I love organizing with people that have been incarcerated. Like, talk to one. They will literally tell you. Like, I talked to a dude once. He could not smell. And I asked him, like, bro, why can't you smell anything? Oh, because the cops put pepper spray up my nose in jail. I'm like, why did they put pepper spray up your nose in jail? Oh, because they were trying to kill me. Like, he just said it like we were discussing the weather. Talk to these people if you, like, actually want to have your class rage at the abominable ways that we're forced to live and be tortured in this country sharpened. Talk to a talk to a current convict. So, yeah. You got Karen Bass, who was cut fire department funding by $17.6 million months before wildfires burned her city down. And she is spending her time in Ghana right now on vacation. So this is People's City Council Los Angeles. Really dope community organizers and propagandists. Highly recommend you follow them and support them. They have a list of mutual aid resources. Mutual Aid LA has put together a bunch of resources that will help. So they've got a Google sheet here. So you've got all types of folks that you can help out. Most of these have websites or contact information. So if you're in LA and you have internet access, I highly recommend that you make use of this. I'm going to copy the link and put it in my chat so that comrades who, for whatever reason, are in LA and watching this can access these resources. So this is not an exhaustive list. Information will be updated as they are able to. Please reach out to the organizers directly for clarifying questions. If you have additional resources, please add them to this Mutual Aid LA Network Instagram post, and it will be added to the list. So yeah, don't walk alone. Don't let yourself suffer. Don't be a victim. And of course, All Power Books, really good radical bookstore, is open for emergency use. So if you're evacuating and need a space to get a breather, charge your phone and make a plan, then head to All Power. This is real mutual aid. Like when people are going through the shit, then they need the community to come together. And that's a very, very, very beautiful thing. So yeah. All power to the people of LA, all power to the working class people of LA right now. So, a lot of people have been talking about black representation. Here's the thing. And no, you cannot just write off the desire for black representation as liberal identity politics. Because when you do that, you're basically part of the problem, okay? Wanting people who look like you to be represented. Like the reason why DSA has such problems with Black and Latina and Arab representation is because there are not enough people who look like us. So when we go out and tell Black and brown people to join DSA, okay, people are naturally going to orient more towards people who look like them and who come from their communities. And in the case of migrant comrades, people who speak their language. Why would a migrant come to a DSA meeting where everybody's going to be speaking English and where there's no Spanish translator? It's not going to work. And it's not reactionary identity politics. It's just how people are. So black representation, though, it's simply not enough. Clarence Thomas, for example, is black representation. He's reactionary fascist representation, really no better than a settler. So we have to keep political line, politics in command. So how can we determine which politics is correct in the context of the revolutionary movement for socialism, black liberation, on through to communism? And also, we should not be ideological Philistines and be like, oh, everybody's correct, everybody's valid. No, there is right and wrong. There is a correct line and there is an incorrect line. How can we determine which is correct? Well, it's simple. In the context of the communist movement, the line that represents the class interests of the united proletariat, the colonized proletariat, which is the vanguard of the class struggle in the United States. Many revisionists and reformists, however, simply take the lazy route and promote black reformists and elected officials as black representation. For one, this is a manifestation of great man or great woman leadership. And for two, these individuals usually do not represent revolutionary politics, because if they represented revolutionary politics, they would not be allowed to remain in these positions. They would find some way to get rid of them. That being said, they should still be worked with in a tactical way around issues of importance to the masses, and resources that they offer should definitely be taken. However, they should not be coddled and catered to, nor should they be immune from criticism. That leads to reformist commandism. Failure to hold elected officials to account when they make mistakes leads to commandism of a reformist type. So it's imperative that we identify organic, advanced mass leaders and encourage them to take leadership in our organization. And it's also important that we regularly consult with them and the masses as a whole. That's how you concretely practice the mass line method of leadership. Expanding on this point, many reformists seek out colonized people who already think like them or share their petty bourgeois labor aristocrat background or have their practices. They don't hang out with, organize with, or have co-workers that are ex-cons, homeless, migrants, etc., nor do they seek them out for political consultation. Why? Because they're scared of these people. They're afraid that these people will tell them things that they do not want to hear. As communists, we should not be afraid of hearing things that we do not want to hear when we are looking for material for the mass line. That leads to an echo chamber. The mass line only works when you have a diversity of perspectives, views, and ideas, a diversity of perspectives, views, and ideas. I'm sorry. The reason that reformist campaigns and ideas fail are internal. 9.5 times out of 10, the line is shit. The line is shit because it was determined without consulting the lowest, deepest masses. You cannot just put 2 or 3 or 4 people in a room and come out with a line. What social investigation and class analysis have you done? If you haven't done any, it's not going to be a line. It's going to be a shitty idea that nobody's going to pick up. The line is made by representatives of the petty bourgeoisie and labor aristocracy and presented in a commandist way. They just hand you something and be like, here you go. Do work for this. But nobody asked. Nobody asked the people if this is what they wanted. So the people naturally rejected it because they recognize it as something foreign and that is untied to their experience. So those are just my thoughts on the mass line today and how we can actually apply it in DSA. This is from James Foreman, revolutionary leader in the 60s. I believe he was with CORE, SNCC, one of those. But he eventually became a Marxist-Leninist. 20 enemy forces within a revolutionary organization that must be combated. So part of being a communist is realizing that we are continuously in a stage of development. Somebody asked me a couple days ago, what do I have to do? What do I have to read to be a good Maoist? And they also asked me, they asked for a short list. I'm like, bruh, comrade, if you are not willing to actually do the reading, like I am consistently educating myself. I have books on my desk. I have several stacks of books behind me. I have books on my nightstand. I have books on my dresser. I have a bookshelf. I have another bookshelf. I am surrounded by books because educating ourselves is essential to being a communist. We cannot make a line if we don't know what the fuck we're talking about. I'm always reading and listening to the news. I'm always studying. Like Malcolm said, if I have 5 to 10 minutes of free time, I'm reading a book because I can learn something therein that will help me liberate my people. That's how I think of study. So if you're not willing to thoroughly study and constantly be studying for the rest of your natural life, you ain't no Maoist. Do not just call yourself something because some streamer you like or because one of your friends that you like is such. Because chances are, to be quite honest, they're not even Maoists. Like, Maoism means work, okay? And we don't even brag about our work. We don't do that. Like, why? Because if you come up to me and be like, hey, I knocked such and such amount of doors today, or I wheat pasted 15 million flyers today, I'm like, okay, cool. You call yourself a Maoist, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Do we get lazy? Do we slip up? Of course we do. But the sign of a good communist, the sign of a good Maoist, the sign of a good revolutionary organizer is our ability to recognize these bad trends within ourselves and actively, with the help and critique of our comrades, work to fix it. So, 20 enemy forces within a revolutionary organization or individual that must be combated. 1. Lack of practice in day-to-day work. 2. Loss of morale. 3. Laziness. 4. Failure to study revolutionary theory and the experience of other revolutionaries. 5. Failure to engage in criticism and self-criticism. 6. Liberalism. 7. Failure to exert leadership. 8. Lack of initiative and imagination. 9. Lack of revolutionary discipline and individualism. 10. Elitism. 11. Lack of internal democracy and authoritarian actions. 12. Egotism. 13. Jealousy. 14. Sectarian attitudes and actions. 15. Isolation. 16. Adventurism and romanticism. 17. Male chauvinism. 18. Reactionary nationalism. 19. Police infiltrators. And 20. Lack of administration. So, part of the introduction, this stuck out at me. Backbiting, underhand tactics, gossip, rumors, incorrect statements, and laziness, aka DSA, in many cases. Again, I still love my organization, but if I were to define the main cultural characteristics of certain elements of my organization, I would definitely say the propensity towards backbiting, underhand tactics, gossip, endless rumors, incorrect statements, and laziness. These are destructive tendencies that plague some organizations that seek to call themselves revolutionaries. Struggle could be, I guarantee you, like he replaces every E with an O. So I think his typewriter was busted. Anyways, struggle could be and must be waged within individuals who manifest these tendencies and others. But the tendencies themselves must be exposed, and our all effort must be made to correct them. Without the struggle to eliminate the cause, then other sisters and brothers will be infected with the same deadly poison, and we will find ourselves constantly fighting the enemy within rather than the enemy without. So if you have internal contradictions within yourself, then you want to be an effective cadre, and the external contradictions, such as the police, such as fascists, those are going to be able to come influence and fuck you up. If you have a weak foundation and an external contradiction comes and destroys you or ruins your organization because you allowed yourself to become weak, that's because you allowed internal contradictions to rot you from the inside. So, scrolling through, we see a lot of manifestations of errors that you can make as a cadre. I'm going to post this after, of course. 3, laziness. Much of the rationalizing of the failure to do day-to-day work comes from plain laziness and a failure to understand the urgency of the work that must be done. In DSA, there's constant talk about lack of capacity. And yes, if there's only 5 people in your DSA chapter, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to go out and make the revolution tomorrow. Well, you're not making the revolution tomorrow regardless. But the thing is to properly use capacity and properly delegate capacity so that you can be involved in a variety of areas of work without spreading yourself too thin. Yes, we should definitely concentrate also on 2 or 3 things that maybe our comrades have experience in or that they have connections to. But we should never ever sit out a struggle, especially keeping in sync with the principle that contradictions ebb and flow. Like what's big, so to speak, today may not be big tomorrow. For example, if there's a prison uprising in your city, like there has been in St. Louis, and your main thing is, I don't know, working on a reform campaign or a petition campaign, fuck that petition campaign. That's not important right now. What's important is the fact that people have risen up and struggled in your city and you need to be there. Perhaps there's a psychological basis for laziness, and this subject needs to be further explored, but many people have acquired lazy habits from street life as students, children, and community organizers still wish to be known as revolutionaries. Revolutionary organization must eliminate the lazy person from its ranks. For the effects are corrosive and tend to demoralize those who are disciplined and work very hard. It's just like a group project. If you're a beast, if you're a workhorse, and you've got some people that within your organization, that are doing the group project with you, that don't do anything but fucking flirt and smoke weed after school and then go to sleep or go eat or go skateboard or shit like that or play video games all fucking night instead of working on a group project, and they throw all the work off on you, you're really not going to give a fuck about what happens to those people. And as a matter of fact, you're going to learn to despise those people. It's the same in revolutionary organizations. Failure to study revolutionary theory and the experiences of other revolutionaries. A serious person committed to revolution in the United States cannot ever take the attitude that we do not have something to learn from all revolutionaries. We must build upon all revolutionary thinkers and test our and their ideas in practice. It is very important to read and study biographies and works about revolutionary thinkers. This type of reading gives insight into some of the background material. Books about the political, economic, and social development within revolutionary countries are important. Some books that are supposed to be critical of revolutionaries and revolutionary countries are often useful if one reads them critically. All those seeking to engage in revolutionary struggle should make a priority of acquiring revolutionary books. We can still buy books in the United States, some books, but it is not unreasonable to assume that there will come a day when revolutionary books will be banned from bookstores. Now we've got the internet, so there's really no excuse to not study and read. Where possible, we should strive to keep articles and stories that appear in revolutionary newspapers and magazines, as many fresh ideas first appear in these forums. In order to keep abreast of current events in the United States, we must read establishment newspapers and magazines, and sometimes this gives us information on the intentions of the U.S. government. People who attack Marxism as a white ideology are not serious about revolution. Many of the sciences that we study every day in some form were developed by the accumulated wisdom of people, including white people. We utilize scientific discoveries regardless of the race of the person who is credited for the discovery. Those who attack Marxism as a white thing simply do not understand and refuse to recognize the scientific truth contained in the discoveries of Marx about the functioning of societies and how revolutions are made. Failure to engage in criticism and self-criticism. Once we have taken actions and implemented plans, it is absolutely necessary to constantly evaluate these actions and plans and to bring to bear collective discussions and criticism. What were the positives? What were the negatives? Where was strength exhibited and where was weakness displayed? We study our strengths in order to maximize them and our weaknesses in order to eliminate them and thus grow stronger. Sometimes we fail to recognize that criticism and self-criticism must stem above all from a desire for unity. Some people do not have the strength to criticize, or often criticism is all negative without pointing out the good points. No action is all negative. Somewhere, there are some positive points in the actions we have performed, and it is the duty of the brother and sister who is striving for unity to not only criticize, but to take into account the historical development of an organization, a person, or an action performed by a group. Self-criticism is sometimes the hardest task for many of us. We often can see incorrect actions in others, but fail to assess our responsibility for those actions, and sometimes people think they're above criticism, leading to an authoritarian style of work. Within a group, we must ask people to give criticism of themselves so that they develop the habit of self-criticism, and we must always examine ourselves for mistakes. Many times, people point the finger at the political unit or members within the unit without realizing that all the actions of a political unit or group share equal responsibility for actions. Liberalism. In his essay, Comrade Liberalism, Mao Zedong has clearly defined many forms that liberalism takes and the destructive nature of this tendency. The study and constant discussion of its content is mandatory to fully understand this paper. In my personal experiences in observing and interacting with many others, I have found the contents of this essay illuminating. So, yeah, he goes down the list. Some are pretty self-explanatory, like elitism. Many people and organizations take an elitist attitude when they think their small numbers are the cream of the crop. Students in particular are full of elitist concepts due to their educational and class experiences, but there are many other people who judge themselves as vanguard forces, regardless of the size of their ranks and some of their social practices, revealing elitist tendencies. Elitism tends to make people very sectarian and instills a dislike for mass work and love of people. Those who do not understand the laws of history and the role that millions of people will play in revolutionary activity will fall prey to elitism, isolate themselves, and become ineffective. So don't fall prey to elitism and become ineffective. And of course, like I said, I'm going to post this in the chat so you comrades can review it at your leisure, but definitely review it and read it. The thing with like all of this new communist era / black liberation movement stuff from the 60s and 70s, that like a lot of this is pertinent to DSA chapters. A lot of it is pertinent to any left organization in the United States, because this shit still exists. Egotism, for example, is extremely relevant. Egotism is manifested in many different forms. A, the egotist usually refuses to do detailed work, thinking that he or she is above the day-to-day tedious work that is necessary to build a revolutionary organization. B, the egotist is unwilling to struggle with other members of the organization, assuming that they are ignorant or stupid or not at the proper level of development. C, the egotist pretends to be elitist in outlook, believing in the privileged few. D, the egotist therefore actually has a disregard for the masses, although the egotist rhetoric is often couched in terms of the people. E, the egotist seeks his own personal advantage in most situations. The egotist is very authoritarian. The egotist is usually chauvinistic. We have known some popular egotistic revolutionary heroes who consistently beat women and or kick them out of bed after intercourse. The egotistic person hoards information. When there is a travel assignment in the name of the organization, he is only concerned about his or her advantage, and not that of the organization that he or she represents. So you got jealousy, sectarian attitudes, and isolation, which all of this shit leads to. So study this, because like the fire burning down LA, these bad tendencies will burn down you and will eventually burn down your organization. And I don't think you want that to happen. I certainly don't want it to happen because, I mean, just look at what's happened. We're not even a good week into this year yet. We are only on the second week of this year, and we've already had two very suspicious terrorist activities that were committed by former U.S. servicemen, one of which was Special Forces. And now we've got a major American city, the third largest in the country, burning to the ground. And the fire department is running out of water, and you've got prison slaves that are literally forced to put out the fire. I also saw Ethan Klein whining about Hassan, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know why the fuck. Like, what? Okay, here's the thing with streamer drama for me. Why the fuck are you all so up each other's ass? Like, you do your thing, he does his thing. Who cares? Like, you two, and it's all Ethan's fault. Like, you are a grown ass man. You have 3 kids, bro. There's a fire outside your window, and you're like, I bet Hassan is wondering whether or not my computer is going to survive. Like, bro, why are you worried about another grown ass man? LA is the second largest city in the country. Thank you, generic urbanism channel. True to your name. Why are you? Why? I don't know. I guess it's a white people thing. It has to be a white people thing. A white petty bourgeois thing. Like,